Hello everyone tuning in. My name is Syaheedah and I'm the curator of the exhibition and exercise of meeting the glitch season, currently on show at the National Gallery and organised as part of the Proposals for Novel Ways of Being initiative. What you've just watched is a performance produced by artist Tini Aliman and her collaborators, titled Pokoknya Intrusive Transducers, the third and final work of her Pokoknya series. We have here Tini Aliman to explain a bit more about the work, but before we start, I think it's important to reintroduce the show for context. In short, an exercise of meaning in the glitch season highlights local articulations which mirror the many undercurrents the world is grappling with in this pandemic. From proposing new pathways of action to making spaces for other worlds to exist alongside ours, to subverting the absurdity of our everyday now, in mirroring the state of mind we are in, the exhibition embodies these intricate processes of contemplating. Before we have a conversation on the performance, I'd like to introduce Tini a little more as well. Tini Aliman is a sound designer, field recordist and Foley artist who works at the intersection of theatre and film sound design, live sound art performance, installation and collaborative projects. Her research interests include but are not limited to forest networks, oral architecture, plant consciousness and the variables of data translations via biodata sonification. In 2018, she was nominated for the Best Sound Design category for Live Theatre Awards for her work for Angkat by Theatre Ika Matra. She has been involved in projects and exhibitions across Asia Pacific and Europe. Her recent projects have been presented at NTUCCA, Biennale Urbana at Kasema Pepe, Venice and Museum of Contemporary Art Taipei. So let's get started. So the first question, Pokoknya in Malay is loosely translated to as essentially or a play on the word pokok, which means tree in Malay, which also refers to the root of the matter or the tree belonging to. Using this title as a starting point, and to also help recall the work for our audiences tuning in, could you share more about this research interest, how it came about, and how you have translated these ideas in two iterations, Pokoknya and Pokoknya Organic Cancellation, which is currently sitting in the exhibition? What were the developments between the two?
Okay, so the one that we just watched, Pokoknya Intrusive Transducers, is the third iteration of the Pokoknya series, bringing to a close a tripartite of works on the limits and possibilities of interspecies communication. The work Pokoknya has been categorized into three subjects and environments. The first one is identified as being real, reaching out, where we brought 7 plants into the Galleria at NTU CCA to perform with 1 movement artist, 2 sound artists and a mini gamelan ensemble. So this is a response to the overarching theme of the exhibition happening there at NTUCCA, the post-human city. And the second iteration, Pokoknya Organic Cancellation, the one that is showing at National Gallery right now, is thought of as being abstract and relatively closed. So this work is a response to the theme of the exhibition here, an exercise of meaning in glitch season, and it explored the conversation around memory fragments, the afterlife of a performance, the impact of paradigm shifts, and how the state of our being in these strange times is rendered cancelled. The title of the work came about when I was informed that we weren't allowed to bring any organic materials into the space or the gallery. And then I had to think about how I can make space for these materials that I work with, which are very much organic and alive. And then the third one, Pokoknya Intrusive Transducers, is seen as natural and breaking open.
So, as you mentioned, Pokoknya Intrusive Transducers is described as a form of closure to this tripartite work. One of the key aspects of this body of work is the emphasis for collaboration. From movement artists to voice artists collaborating with our non-human friends, including the plants and the environment in which these responses were captured. How was that process like and what were the different roles they played?
So, using oral architecture as a concept, where sound waves propagated are modified by the spatial acoustics, Pokoknya Intrusive Transducers works around using 5 types of spatiality. They are navigational, social, aesthetics, musical and symbolic. And in 20 hours spanned over 4 sessions, 2 movement artists, Ruby Jayasilan and Zarina Muhammad, along with 2 voice artists, Zachary Chan and Rosmaini Buang, under the direction of and dramaturgy of Irfan Kasban, we devised the work by working with separate themes for each session, and how the artist responds, reacts, resonates, and find their ways of communicating with the specific aspect of the space through their personal experiences, through the sounds they hear and what they see, and of course the histories and the stories told of the specific space that we work with. The themes were permission, gratitude, renewal, and purification. The videographer Eric Lee played a rather interesting role in this process. He, being placed outside or removed from the equation, he played the eyes of the audience and unanimously assigned as the intruder of that space. On the week we did permission, we discussed things like ownership, belonging, dwellers, those passing by and those who stayed, and questions we asked each other were like, does the space or land ever belong to anybody or anything, and if it did, to what extent? Are we being respectful to the space when we enter? How much do we see and how much do we hear? And then at the end of it, there's an additional scene or shot outside the intended space, and I call it Return. It is our ficus microcapa, or a Malayan banyan, endearingly named Ara after my mother, which means ficus in Malay. The tree is how the Pokoknya series started, and she has performed at multiple spaces and multiple times, and is basically the star of the project.
With the second work, Pokoknya Organic Cancellation, you were obviously responding to the exhibition. In a time where we're all moving into digitalization, the ones that get left out are not only those who are not technologically savvy, but our non-human friends as well. In reflection of these 3 iterations, why do you think it's important to make space for them, or was it your intention to articulate a type of agency for them?
Okay, so I feel that almost everything is borrowed. Borrowing from a culture or subject matter and creating something new makes me think about the trajectory in my own practice, which I like to pursue and continue pursuing, and to explore music and sound through a more synesthetic approaches. I'm skeptical of the possibility of having a pure experience of a work of art, especially sound, which is free of any predetermining influences. So, for example, culturally, visually, we borrow, right? We borrow from all these influences that we have around us. So this has a lot to do with my appreciation, like recording the galvanic conductance in plants and turning it into sound is a lot to do with my appreciation for silence and the silenced. So I'm interested to present an accidental, improvisational, sonic textures and punctuations, and post-processed sound sculptures that list these improvisations above and beyond the ordinary. So the role of the listener to me is a very important one, because they have the potential to either limit or expand the meaning of the sound. And I do think that the contextual details that frame any artwork, especially the experience of it, affect the depth and of understanding of one would potentially have. Art is perhaps associated with a more cerebral connotations and poetic expressiveness that draws from the artist's personal style and a sense of aesthetics. Many works of art, visually or musical, draw from multiple reference points, mediums and can be simultaneously poetic, intellectual, traditional, and artisanal. So using natural media, right, they are made in response to site-specific audiovisual topographies and environments with absolutely no intention to assign a voice or to the plants or speak for them, interpreting or translating their stories or putting intelligible words that our human minds can comprehend. This work is really just an invitation for the audience to simply listen and to listen deeply.
Thank you, Tini. So we also have some questions for you submitted by the audience who came to visit the exhibition, and here they are. So the first question we had was from @_Sun Kim, asking what made you use the form of squares as the main shape of the design?
Right. This is for the work at NGS, right?
Correct.
Right. So let's rewind back to the week or few days when we had the announcement of circuit breaker, right? So the entire week and the following weeks after that, we were busy being online. We were doom scrolling. We know the news are not going to be great, but we continued doom scrolling anyway because we want to keep ourselves like updated, hoping for the best, but you know. And I realized that during that period, that our source of information are really just our blue lights, our screens, right? We're always on our phones or iPad or computers. So the sculpture is really just pixels in 3D.
So the next question we have is by @Miss Pixelette. Which part of the planning process did you spend the most time on?
Right. We didn't really have a lot of time working on this project, right? So, I mean, yeah. So in that, how many weeks do we have? We have 8 weeks also, or less.
Yeah.
Right. 8 weeks or less. When Syaheedah approaches me, it was more like put up something that you have previously done before, and I was like, okay. From performance, we're turning it into a visual piece, which is going to be sitting in a gallery. But I guess aesthetic-wise, I wasn't really spending a lot of time on that. I was spending a lot of time on the technical part of the sound, right? So I would like to have something that cancels, right? And I spent a lot of time trying to find the right distance between the two speakers so that the waveforms can cancel each other out. It can be done very easily using a DAW, right? But analog cancellation using two speakers, I have to think about the complex waveforms. I have to think about the speaker attributes, and ideally, I would like to have a human being in between the two sculptures instead of an object, right? But yeah, I tried with different tones, different sine waves, and like so I guess until the week that we are bumping in, I was actually finalizing the distance between the two speakers, and we kept on moving the two sculptures when we were installing. So yeah, that was the bulk of my work for organic cancellation.
I think just to also add on, I remember during installation we initially wanted people to interact directly with the speakers, but we had to change that because of COVID. So that's why we had a pedal system which was only installed like 2 weeks after the show was open. And just a fact as well. And I think the issue was also how metal supplies were also cut off. So it took us some time to actually prepare the pedal. The last question I think will relate more also about this process of cancellation. So we have a question by @Yemi. They say it's a very cool work. What other ways did you consider using the waveform cancellation?
Okay, so for most mix engineers, a phase cancellation is an absolute no-no, or rather, we try not to have it in like performances or recordings, because it adds an additional sound. But of course, when something which is presented as a mistake by some, it could also be used creatively by others. So like some bands, maybe in the 70s or 80s, they use phase shifts creatively to create like some sort of like spatial awareness, right? And then what I could possibly, or anyone could possibly do again with a phase shift is to create a 3D, I don't know, I think it's called a 3D sound sculpture, where if you assign enough channels or buses, it's called buses, and you can actually assign the sound to come from behind your head, like that, right? So that's a phase cancellation process or something like that. Anyway, yeah, you all just experiment and read. So yeah, everyone experiments. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Tini, for taking the time to explain your work and the performance as well. I believe we have come to the end of our conversation, and I hope you got as much from it. Thank you for being with us. And if you haven't catch it, an exercise on meaning the glitch season opens till 21st February 2021.